Welcome back to International Finance. I am Andy Kim, your Dr. Finance. We are going through chapter 16, which is about foreign direct investment, including cross-border M&As, right? This video, we are going to talk about political risk, how much important it is in your foreign direct investments as well as cross-border acquisitions. This is why, why you need, ultimately, you need to study political science, right? As well as economics and mathematics and coding and AI. Not only quantitative side of the work is important, but also this qualitative work and study is very important. And remember, the economics discipline, right? Discipline of economics used to be called political economics, right? In Adam Smith's age, right? The politics goes together with the economics. And then economics and politics, they mutually influence each other. And internationally, that complicates the picture. And this is why you have to be all-round player. It's joyful, right? Don't take it too painful. Like, oh, I have to study this and that. If you take this as a way to pass the exams and that burdensome, everything becomes painful. But if you take the other perspective, like enjoy and explore all these different disciplines and widen your scope of your brain, this is the best one, international finance, because you need to study political science as well as those mathematics and all these kind of things. Really, truly, this is a combination of art and science, right? Don't believe the hype that science will save your life, right? AI will save the day. No, it's a snake oil sales, guys, right? 약 파는 소리, right? Don't go there. Anyway, so international M&A and political risk. Here's an example that I throw you, which is not in your textbook, which is about M&As between Broadcom and Qualcomm business. Broadcom and Qualcomm. In 2017, right? Broadcom announced that they will take over Qualcomm, right? For like 100 and it's the amount. You just read it, right? And it's self-explanatory. What is important is that these are semiconductors, the chips that goes into your smartphone chips and telecommunication chips and routers and all this kind of this kind of telecommunication related stuff, right? Fine. How much they offered or not is not that important right now, but the important thing is initial bid, the Qualcomm said no, so the Broadcom raised their bid to $82 per share immediately. And then the interesting thing is Donald Trump, right? The US president said no to the deal, right? No to the deal because the deal would hurt the US national interest in 5G communication business. 5G is a buzzword these days, right? Fifth generation of telecommunication. But what is that about? Why is that the case, right? Because Qualcomm is the most important telecommunications chip in the US. And then I remember even like 20 years ago, right? The Samsung, right? Samsung was proud to have the Qualcomm chips in Samsung's AnyCall, the cell phone they had, right? And then I saw some people, right? Some R&D persons in Samsung Electronics getting PhD in electronic engineering. And then later on, after getting PhD in Minnesota, they were going to Qualcomm, which is a lot better place than working in California or something like that. So those things, right? Communication chips interchangeably being used. I could see that. The thing is, Broadcom is another telecommunication company, but it is not, strictly speaking, it is not really American one. It is a Singaporean company. So it is started from Hewlett Packard Semiconductor Division, Broadcom, right? Taken over by Avago Technologies, a Singaporean company whose major shareholders are overseas Chinese funds, right? And then ever since the Donald Trump's regime, and even until now, right, even more these days, the concern about China's growth, and especially the telecommunication chips. If that, there is a rumor that says, those chips have a secret code, right, program that delivers all these data to China's server in the mainland China's headquarters, or Chinese military somehow, so that they will accumulate huge data about the behavior of American people, and then all these European people and Asia, everywhere. So America, at least, right? Donald Trump had to, listen to those concerns of the general public. We don't want to lose data, and then we don't want to be monitored by, observed by Chinese secret police or something like that. So he stopped the deal, right? There is a concern that Chinese influence could be, right, affecting Qualcomm, and then the Qualcomm chips are very, very important for national security, the communication liberty, and all this kind of freedom of the speech, all these kind of things, right? So he stopped it, right? And then together with it, you remember what happened between U.S. and China, especially around surrounding the issue of what Huawei, and then ZTE, all these Chinese telecommunication companies. It goes together with this, right? Even though the CEO Tan Hock Ng is an MIT educated Malaysian CEO, it doesn't matter. Like, America first. Okay, that's what Donald Trump said, right? M&A, cross-border M&As can be stopped with this political risk. That's the whole thing I want to try to say. Having said something about the political risk, right, and then especially about Donald Trump, right? Last year, 2020, was a dramatic year, right? What do you see? Corona-19 virus, right? Spread from, originally, right, from China, Wuhan, and then it's a fact, right? Where it's really started. I don't know. Nobody knows, but it was a place where people started to suffer a lot. It's nothing to pick on. Don't take it personal, right? But it started over there, and then and then fastly it spread out throughout the world. But Donald Trump had a serious issue about that, and by mishandling those situations for Donald Trump, just by saying like it's a hoax or something like that, so that the whole public, general public, right, got infected a lot more, and then a lot of how do you say, casualties, or a lot of people had to suffer from it. For public hygienic, right, issues. It quickly evolved into politics, as well as not just domestic politics like this, right? The domestic politics, Republican, guys were invading Capitol Hill of the United States, and this shouting like this is crazy. But also, those pandemic was affecting international politics, right? Geopolitical risk increased with this. And then if you look at other countries, nowadays India has been suffering a lot, right? A lot of a third wave or fourth wave of pandemic is killing so many people. I'm praying for them. Please, I hope this situation gets resolved somehow, and then improve, or to save the more lives, please. Other things that I want to highlight is that if you are an international businessman, right? If you're working in India, okay, as a expat of Samsung or SK, right? How would you deal with this kind of situation, right? For your own safety and then health, right? That's a very critical issue, and that's the risk that you have to undergo as long as you claim to be international business guy, right? Everything comes at a cost anyway. There is a good side and bad side of being one kind of professional and an international businessman. One of the risk is the disease and pandemic, pandemic as well as local disease, right? And then pandemic situation, I hear some cases that some Korean companies, right, working in other countries, right, their expats get infected by this COVID-19, but unfortunately the language is not English, so that he could not or she could not speak and communicate with the nurses over there, or even not just nurses or doctors, but the country is flooded with all those patients, so that they cannot deal with these patients too much, so that some of the Korean expats get lost their lives, and then immediately burnt in the cremated, and then a lot of misery, right, happened, right, for the international expats, right? So that is the downside risk that you have to think about. And then political risk, yeah, together with this pandemic, right? It's a huge issue. And then getting back to the issue about political risk, right? How much is it important? Well, here's another recent case about ongoing case. Who do you see? Joe Biden, US President. What is he holding in his left hand, right? That is something called, wafer. Maybe I should wave this, right? Wafer. What is this? Wafer, this is a semiconductor chip intermediate product, right? This is made of silicon. Silicon comes from your sands and stones and all these kind of things, right? Silicon. And then they first build an ingot, a bar of silicon of this, how do you say? Like this ingot, right? And they chop it, very thinly sliced ingot, right? And then that's called this wafer, right? Wafer, because that's very thin. Wehas, like in Korean cookies, you have some cookies called wehas, wafers, right? Why is that cookie? That cookie has a lot of slices, and then it's stacked up together. Now this wafer, getting back to it, this is a 12-inch wafer, if I remember correctly. And the 12-inch wafer, inside it, what do you have? Well, you see a lot of squares or rectangles inside over there. One of them becomes one chip, right? Chip, where is it used? Well, inside your cell phone. You open it and then 두들겨 부셔까, right? It's like you break it and then open it, and then you're gonna see some of these chips over there. Or your computer, like this one, Alienware, right? Inside, you will see a lot of chips going inside, right? So, very important product. And we call this semiconductors the grain of 21st century. Lee Byung-chul and then Lee Gun-hee, they predicted that this will be the grain of the next century in 1980s. They had this vision, okay? And lo and behold, it came true. It became true. The thing is, the chips, right, is used everywhere because of Internet of Things, IoT, Internet of Things. They communicate, and then they have to use AI algorithms to better serve your customers and things like that. Everywhere, and especially the cars, right? Electric cars, they use a lot of these chips. Okay, the thing is, the United States has a lot of automobile manufacturers, and that means they need a lot of chips in their car making business, right? The thing is, would you import it from China? And he says no, right? Obviously, there's a trade war against China, right? And then it's getting worse and worse. And so how can the U.S. be independent of the China's influence, especially in this kind of high-tech business, right? Semiconductor seems like very important one these days. So this is the argument he's making in his Oval Office, the White House, right? Oh, can we, produce this kind of chips on our own instead of depending too much on China? Yeah, the picture you see, China versus US, there's a fighting going on. And what is stuck in the middle is South Korea, actually. The country ball, over here, the eyes look like laughing a little bit, but it's not really laughing that I'm trying to say over here. If these two guys laugh, we are like, right? Please don't fight. Okay, that's no good for, and no, not good for us, right? All the countries in between, right, feel similarly, I guess. Anyway, so yeah, and where would you stand, right? Korea, where would you stand is a big question right now in terms of geopolitics and then economics, international politics and economics and finance wise, a very important issue. Especially South Korea is such a big guy, not a small guy, big guy in semiconductor business. You will see why I say big guy over here. Smart cars everywhere. For that part, I need to draw your attention to some of my experience before in CES 2020. I went to their their Benz motor show, right? You see this cool car, right? And then all these things are controlled by the computers inside. And if you go back, right? What do you see? Yes, you see this Benz German car, right, by the way, and then all these people, whoa, right, and this kind of features, right, automatic moving of their cells like that, it's controlled by the semiconductor, right, the computers themselves. So people say nowadays the cars move with data and semiconductors. If you believe cars move with gasoline only, wake up, right? Right. Let me show you. So that's that. Now, semiconductor used everywhere in the industry, right? Then, what is the market share of these different semiconductor producers, right? Here you see in all market share of these all kinds of semiconductors. Number one is by far Intel, right? Did I say by far? Not anymore, but actually. The 2019 Intel takes up about 16% of market share. The next one is amazingly, that's Samsung Electronics, right? None other than Samsung. And then South Korean company, by the way. I call South Korea a Republic of Semiconductor. Why? Because this, compared to the total market size of South Korea, this big fish, right, takes up a huge portion of the South Korean market. And then virtually, if you go to engineering schools, right, like engineering universities, right, 성균관, KAIST, or Seoul Gongdae, right, the biggest and the most powerful guys are always the guys in the semiconductor business. 전전제, we say it. 전기 전자 제어, like electronic engineering guys. If you believe AI and computer science is number one, no, wake up, come on. Still the hegemony, it belongs to semiconductor. All the R&D budgeting and then all this capital budgeting within this R&D, they are the ones who have the power to say, most dollar goes to here and there and there. They are the decision makers, not AI, come on. Not business. Anyway, so SK Hynix, right? They say, this is this much, like 5.4%. So those two companies take up huge portion of semiconductor business. How big is it? It is huge. Like simply, your computers and cell phones and all these important components, that's semiconductor. Most of the money goes there. Okay. Micron Technology, that's US semiconductor company, and Broadcom, Qualcomm, Texas Instrument, Kioxia, that's Toshiba, Japanese one, the only Japanese left here. NXP, I don't know, and then the others. Anyway, so if you look at the top 10 semiconductor manufacturers in the world since 1990, it changed like this. I don't have 2020, but you see pretty much this one, 2019. And then if you look at 1990s, what is interesting is that pretty much half of it belonged to Japanese companies. For example, NEC, Nippon Electronic Company, Toshiba, Hitachi, yeah, all those things, right? Intel, Motorola, US, Fujitsu, Mitsubishi, and Matsushita. All those guys were Japanese. Nowadays, only one is left. Toshiba, Kioxia, kind of things. In 2020, the semiconductor market was like this. If you look at the market share, dominant figure was Intel. The dominant figure, absolute dominant figure. Why? That's the CPU guy, right? CPU, the most important and most expensive ones. And then the smartest, right? Intel led the way. And whereas its competitor, distant competitor number 2 guy, was AMD. It was almost crunched by Intel. It could have died away, right? But that was, that's why I just stick it over here as if like it was stepped, right, on the, all right, like that. And then Motorola and all the other companies were located, were competing. And then Micron over there, Toshiba, and then Japanese, Hitachi, and then NEC, huge ones, right? Whereas Europeans, Philips, they had it, and then Samsung over here, underneath Toshiba. It was an underdog, right? And Samsung always said, we are proud to be associated with Toshiba, and Toshiba's technology, we are adopting it. We learned from them, so they were hugely selling it in South Korea. We learned from this Toshiba like that. And then Hynix is down there, right? And then what do you see? TSMC and UMC Nanya Technologies, right? Those are Taiwanese companies. Now, 2020, right? The market situation changed. Actually, Samsung, right? I was analyzing semiconductor industry in Bank of America. That's why I remember this, right? Precisely. And then that was a time when I go to the investor conference of Samsung earnings announcement, they were always saying their vision about digital convergence. 20 years ago, they were saying like, you know what? Everything will be merged into one thing. We don't know how, but everything will be merged into one hardware. Maybe cell phone, maybe computer, maybe portable computer may develop somehow. Okay. And then we are trying to prepare for that one. And then system on chips kind of concept was studied over there. And then we try to build up those, pools, semiconductors, try to merge everything into one and things like that. At the same time, we are competing how to make the smaller chips and more efficiently, and then lowering down the loss or defects, right? Reducing the defects, and then producing in a bigger wafer and things like that. And they were diligently following this vision persistently throughout 20 years or more, actually, so that that's how they achieved this global status of number 2 right now. 20 years ago, unimaginable, right? They were like far down there. Intel has been there, but it's now close with Samsung. And TSMC was also small, but now, it's big. And SK Hynix was nowhere, but now it's number 4. It's just amazing. Amazing. Just 오래 살고 보니까 if you live long enough, right, you see all kinds of surprising things happening in your life, right? Micron, Qualcomm, unimaginable. Micron was the model company for, Samsung. It's a US one. And whenever you want to value Samsung Electronics, what we looked at was Micron. Oh, Micron stock goes up. Oh, Samsung stock goes up together. It's like, oh, Bitcoin goes up, the Dogecoin goes up together with it. or Ethereum follows it. Kind of idea, right? Anyway, so that's nowadays. And then if you draw a picture like this, it would be like Samsung and Intel and TSMC, and then nowadays you have Nvidia, which is about GPU. Yeah, I don't know how much you play computer games or mine bitcoins, right? But if you do that, you must be familiar with this name, Nvidia. Okay. By the way, I have 2 graphic cards in my computer. And then AMD survived. Not only survived, AMD, what is amazing is that they came back and even dominating in the CPU market and then GPU together. And amazingly, Lisa Su, she's a female CEO, an Asian female CEO, very amazing one, and very impressive to see her progress over there. MIT PhD, MIT undergraduate as well, super genius, right? Usually Intel was the one whose CEO used to be CEOs had a PhD in Stanford, top school PhD in engineering, right? To lead this kind of the semiconductor companies, you need a PhD in engineering anyway. But this is the one, okay, nowadays, equipped with top talents over there. Intel recently tumbled down a lot over the past 5 years or something, but this year they have new CEOs. So let's see how much he brings some comeback, right? He's a Stanford PhD, but let's see. And then memory chips, right? The semiconductor business, you have largely 2 different categories. We used to say that. Nowadays, we have some more categories, but CPU is a logical one, whereas memory is like about, recording all those things in your chips. And then here in memory chip business, the biggest one, absolutely, that's Samsung, and then SK Hynix. More than half of the market share, I guess, belongs to these 2 guys. And then TSMC follows, and the Infineon, that's a German one, starting from Siemens, and Kioxia, that's a Japanese one, and you see another Taiwanese one, MediaTek, right? Micron, I said the US ones, ST Microtechnologies, that's European ones. Nowadays, what? The country, nationality also seem to be at play. Also, together with it, more important thing about memory chips is their business model, okay? Something called foundry is hot in fashion, foundry. Okay, foundry. It's like outsourcing, right? Being an outsourced producer. You design the chip, whatever you want, right? The IoT, Internet of Things, tells us that many different machines need their own semiconductors in their usage, right? It could be cars, it could be monitors, it could be windows, it could be fans or air conditioners, depending on the application. You design yourself, right, about the chips that you need. What we will do is just produce the chips as you have designed, okay? So that's foundry business. And 20 years ago, that business seemed to be less profitable because the key seemed to be like the highest, most value, important value comes from the design itself instead of manufacturing itself. But these days, the situation changed so that there are not many foundries doing that kind of business. You're virtually oligopolistic power, right? Or virtually monopoly, so that you have more market power to charge more the margins, right? So naturally the weight has been become more important. The foundry has become more profitable over time. The Samsung Electronics and SK Hynix that say 20 years ago, we are not going to do foundry business. That's like a low type guy's business, right? They were kind of arrogant in that sense. Nowadays, they realize, oh, we should have done that, right? They have been focusing much more on their 100% DRAM, right? Dynamic Random Access Memory. Even what is this about? This is memory of your computers that disappears if you turn off the computer, right? Whatever you copy and paste, right? You copy one picture from the website, like this logos, right? And then you paste it on PowerPoint. That gets stored into your DRAM, Dynamic Random Access Memory. But this memory gets erased if you, turn off the computer. The power is off. So if you copy and turn off the computer and turn on the computer and paste it, no way to paste it. Come on. So that's DRAM up kind of idea. Okay. Anyway, so they have been focusing on this DRAM and competed for better performing DRAMs only. Whereas these guys were like, we're more flexible, open to all kinds of things. You just tell me, right? So nowadays, these kind of, foundry business is getting highlight, and then they're trying to expand into foundry. One smart reason they said we're not going to do foundry that right now, and 20 years ago, right, was that foundry business, you can do that whenever necessary. But DRAM is highly competitive, so that you don't want to miss that opportunity. Once you miss it a year, that's forever, you're gone. So they wanted to just focus on this one first. Now, moving into nowadays, the huge demand for foundry business, right, seem to be so quick that nowadays it's moving to foundry business seemed like, it's getting slower than what you should, right? We wish it were faster to transition from this to that, but it seems like it's taking some more time. Anyway, another interesting part about this semiconductor business. By the way, why do I tell you so much about the semiconductor business? Because Korea, first of all, for international students, you visiting Korea, this is the Republic of what? Semiconductor, especially memory chip. Okay, so given that you are in South Korea, it is better for you to learn hear something about semiconductor. It's like when you are in France, you'd better learn something about Bordeaux wine, right? Don't you think so? So this is, semiconductor business that I'm trying to say. Taiwanese and Japanese one, only one. And then European ones, Infineon and ST Microelectronics are there. And the thing is, interesting thing is, all those Japanese companies that were dominant like 20 years ago, these are all gone. Hitachi, Fujitsu, NEC, Toshiba, Elpida, gone. It's just, which was unimaginable 20 years ago. I never thought that Korean companies like Samsung would become such a dominant power later on. And then Samsung nowadays have Austin production facility, Austin factory like this in Texas, right? Why? This is foreign direct investment, creating jobs over there, and then making US people happy, US politicians happy as well. And then also there are a lot of smart engineers in the US naturally gravitated to Austin, Texas, right? Stanford, MIT, all those guys may have more difficulty coming to South Korea than coming to Austin, Texas, right? So why don't they just develop over there? And then this morning, there was an announcement that the US president and South Korean president had a summit meeting. And then together with it, simultaneously, Korean companies, they announced that they will invest in total about 40 billion US dollars in the US as an FDI. And then Samsung alone, in among them, right? Samsung will be investing $20 billion, right? 20조 won, right? That's a huge amount, right? To build up more cooperation and then settle. The South Korea doesn't want any more trouble, right? Coming from US-China troubles and then things like that. And then China, South Korea has to do something about it in the U.S. market anyway. For that reason, political risk is huge, and then unquestionably, this is the biggest risk when investing abroad, right? And a more important question than normative judgments about the appropriateness of the foreign government's existing legislation is, does the foreign government uphold the rule of law or not? How much of a, can we trust that legal system? Is the law enforced well or not? Okay, is a very important question. A big source of risk is the non-enforcement of contracts. Whenever there's outlaw guys, right, the deceitful guys, maverick comes in, would you be able to sue that guy and punish them severely or not? If not, there's a huge risk. And then let's say there are macro risk and micro risk in political risk, just like in economics, macro and micro. All foreign operations are put at risk due to adverse political developments. That's macro risk. Micro risk is, selected foreign operations are put at risk due to adverse political developments. And then transfer risk is also there. It's about uncertainty regarding cross-border flows of capital, wealth transfer. Okay, sometimes the countries, the politicians will say, you cannot repatriate your profit back to your home country. Boom, stop it. I have to freeze your asset, freeze your money inside our country. Then you're screwed. That's transfer risk. Operational risk, it's about the uncertainty regarding the host country's policies on a firm's operations, your factories related ones. And then control risk, it's about the uncertainty regarding the expropriation, the control risk. You can imagine Kim Jong-un taking out the, ownership of the company. It's not your company. Boom, this is Kim Jong-un's company. You're screwed, right? That's that. Political risk, if you look at the Israel, right? Recently there was a Iron Dome, and then the issues going on, Palestine and then Israel's conflict. Geopolitical risk is huge. And then measuring the political risk, well, the host country's political and government system matters. And then the country with too many political parties and frequent changes of government is risky. You want some political stability. And then the track records of political parties and their relative strength also matters. If the Socialist Party is likely to win the next election, then you have to watch out. I told you, okay, it's not just about being scientific about in doing international finance. You need some artistic sense of about this kind of political risk as well. And then integration into the world system also matters. North Korea and Iran are examples of isolationist countries, unlikely to observe the rules of the game. That's a huge negative element. North Korea, okay? Would you ever want to invest in North Korea? This part is a serious drawback. And ethnic and religious stability also matters. Look at recent genocides around the world, and then regional security also matters. Kuwait is a nice enough country, but it isn't a rough. But it's in a rough neighborhood. That was the risk factor before Iraqi war. Anyway, and then the measuring political risk. There is a key indicators you can identify. Those key economic indicators would be like political risk, right? It's not entirely independent of economic risk and mutually influencing each other. And severe income inequality and the deteriorating living standards can cause major political disruptions. I mean, this is happening everywhere in the world, right? Used to be happening in one part of the world, and the other part was okay. But nowadays, starting from the United States, everywhere, right? All those racial conflicts in the United States, why is that happening, right? in the end, it goes back to income inequality and then those social distress, right? Class struggle goes on. In 2002, Argentina's protracted economic recession led to the freezing of bank deposits, street riots, and 3 changes of the country's presidency in as many months. And what you see on this chart is political risk analysis for Vietnam, and using those indicator, the criteria to look at, political weakness, economic strength, political strength, I guess, over here, and then economic weakness over here, political and government indicators, and then economic indicators. These are more numerical side of it. And then so there are some ways to analyze, right, or some standardized way of assessing the political risk like this. This is an example of Turkey, okay? And then there are, I mean, this is not in the textbook, but there are some consulting groups that specializes in this political risk. And one of the prominent things that I would like to highlight is Eurasia Group by Ian Bremmer, okay? And then people, yeah. So Ian Bremmer is a very famous celebrity who is commenting all these kind of political issues, and every week or day, right? These are the associates, and then it's gonna be, I guess, it's kind of fun to work for this kind of companies after graduating, right? Yeah. And then they also manage a YouTube channel called G0. And then there you see 60-second summary of the world political risk. You see Kim Jong-un over there. And then they also, I mean, this is Ian Bremmer.
Hi, everybody. Ian Bremmer here, around your world in 180 seconds. Have your questions lined up.
Yes. And then they also have some kind of a puppet shows, puppet regime. Yes.
And now our exclusive interview with Jair Bolsonaro,
Kind of
who
fun
is
to watch
still
this one,
somehow president
Go
of
ahead and
Brazil.
Yeah. So political risk assessment has been going on. It's a important element in the international finance. Hedging political risk. How would you hedge it? Well, geographic diversification will naturally take care of it. Simply put, don't put all your eggs in one basket. So diversify geographically. Minimize exposure, which is you can form joint ventures with local companies. I told you before. Delivery Hero, they formed a joint venture with Uahan Hyungjae of South Korea, and that joint venture company 50/50 is going to be set up in Singapore. Anyway, and then the local government may be less inclined to expropriate assets from their own citizens. So that's why join a consortium. Consortium is a group of company, right, of international companies to undertake FDI. Local government may be less inclined to expropriate assets from a variety of countries all at once. This is an idea that I want to highlight a little bit for when it comes to the business in North Korea. Okay, this one, joint consortium. Kaesung is an area I'm going to tell you later in a couple of slides later. But where the South Korean companies invested in North Korea, and Kaesung is the city in North Korea, and then they're expropriated essentially. Why are they expropriated? I think the major reason is because South Korea did not form a consortium from other countries, right? Only South Koreans. That's why North Korea, can do whatever they want, because they completely ignore South Korea. 호구 취급, like it's like crazy. We have to bash them somehow, but it's not easy, right? Realistically impossible almost. So in that case, why don't we just form consortium, right? That's one thing you could think about, right? Russia together, China together, right? So let's develop North Korea together, right? Why does South Korea have to be the only one investing over there? And that's if you believe South Korea has to be the only one developing North Korea, that's racist. Okay, that's too much nationalistic. Okay, the thing is, North Korea, they themselves are racist, and then North Korea triggers and then entertains your racist kind of mindset in you, and then nationalistic sentiment in South Korea, so that 우리 민족끼리, Korean people alone, right? Please, let's just develop Kaesung, only you, not everybody but you, making you feel so special. But that's bait, right? That's a bait. You should not bite. Consortium is one idea that you can explore later on. Finance projects with local borrowings. Yes, that's something you can do to manage your political risk. And then another idea of managing political risk is getting insured. Insurance company? Wouldn't the insurance company, aren't they doing the life insurance kind of standardized product only? No, unconventional products you can get insured, because insurance business is about betting, right? In the end, the ultimate mechanism of insurance is about betting. Such and such kind of event will not happen. I guarantee you. If that kind of event happens, I'm gonna pay you, right? I bet you, right? This kind of betting is the original form of insurance. So Kim Jong-un, don't worry, right? If he takes over and screws up your company, I'm gonna pay you for that one. That's insurance. For that return, you need to pay me some insurance fees, right? That insurance fee for North Korea will be huge. Anyway, the Overseas Private Investment Corporation, OPIC, a US government federally owned organization, is there for this kind of insurance. And this insurance is against the inconvertibility of foreign currencies. You can just have North Korea in your mind, okay? Inconvertibility of North Korean currency, yeah. Expropriation of the US-owned assets, oh yes. And then destruction of US-owned physical properties due to war, revolution, and other violent political events in foreign countries. Okay. And loss of business income due to political violence. Okay. This kind of things, whenever it happens, this insurance companies will repay you. And then expropriation of foreign-owned assets. If you look at the graph from 1960s to 1990s, well, it comes and goes, but it's kind of silent. Number of firms has decreased, and number of countries expropriating has shrunk down. Okay, they don't do expropriation because they all know that the international capital market is beneficial for them too, right? Making both sides happy, right? Suez Canal, once it was expropriated, but nowadays it's not anymore. I told you about Kaesung Industrial Complex, which is in this area. This is the splitting line between North and South Korea. And then Kaesung area is this one, right? My wife's family is from this area, by the way. And then this is the place where North Korea set up a complex where the South Korean companies can invest and build up their factories, and then transfer some technologies, I guess, maybe production technologies like this, and then like that, and this is the area. But the thing is, every now and then, whenever there is a tension, geopolitical tension between North and South Korea, this Kaesung area becomes troublesome, because in the end, recently they expelled South Korean companies out of that facility, right? It's just kicked out, everybody. Go out! I hate you guys! Come on. There has to be some predictability, but this is completely unpredictable. And closing of Kaesung, you see it. And then this is the moment when recently, this year or last year, North Korea blowed off or demolished the building of Kaesung Industry Investment Supporting Center. This is a supporting center that South Korean government built out of taxpayers' money. South Korean taxpayers' money, not North Korea. They blew up our money and then can't say anything about it, right? That's called expropriation or demolition, whatever. So that's that unpredictability of the political risk, right? By the way, North Korea risk in South Korean market is minimal because those threats, right? At random time, they always say, we're gonna kill you. They never killed us, right? Over the last 70 years. So we are like, eat your heart out. Yeah, come on. You shoot me, baby. And then they don't shoot us, right? Yeah, talking about this, the chance of getting hit, right? SKKU, my school, is very close, right next to, not right next, 15 minutes drive to away from the Blue House, which is the president's palace, right? So if North Korea shoots, that's gonna be us, right? At the gunpoint, we are studying it, but doesn't matter. Over the last 70 years, we've been living it like this, and then so we just life goes on. Nowadays, when North Korea shoots any missiles, no surprise to South Korean stock market at all. And then corruption, it matters a lot. North Korea is bottom, but there are some countries, there's a variation about this corruptedness, and then this international organization diligently quantify this. So the cleanliness, right, of these countries are shown over here, and then where is our good old friend North Korea? Anyway, so go ahead and look at your textbook about it, and the summaries are self-evident, so go ahead and read it, and then I'm going to move down to the chapter about corporate governance. So thanks for watching.